You're listening to Sound Opinions. I'm Jim DeRogatis. My partner is Greg Cott. We are here at the Goose Island Tap Room with James Alex of Beach Slang. Welcome, James.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. You're playing later today at Goose's big block party, but we have you and an acoustic guitar, which is a true rarity. Greg and I were comparing notes. We're going to jump right into the deep end.
Okay.
I have learned at 51 years of age, there's two kinds of people in life, right? There's people who believe Lou Reed when he sang in rock and roll about a life saved by rock and roll, and there's people who don't. I like the people who do, okay? The very first lines on the new album are, play it loud, play it fast, play me something that'll always last. Play it soft, play it quiet, play me something that will save my life. Do you believe that?
Oh yeah. With all my heart, with all my guts, you know. Yeah, if you subscribe to Lou Reed's thinking, we're gonna get along pretty famously. I was a pretty lost kid, you know. I mean, rock and roll gave me a sense of belonging and purpose, you know, and I guess I haven't been able to shake that off, nor have I wanted to, you know.
Because it's so unfashionable today. You know, for so many people, rock and roll and art in general. Sure. I mean, you know, for some people it's film, for some people it's painting, right?
Sure.
You know, it's become another hip accoutrement to our stylish life.
You're right.
Right. Instead of that lifeline that gives you a reason for living.
Sure. Yeah. I suppose I was able to get attached to it young enough and desperately enough that like I can't see it as anything but you know, sort of sewn into me, you know, where it doesn't feel like costume jewelry, you know. Yeah.
It's not a pose that you put on.
No, I've
What was the light bulb moment? What was the moment that music hit you and you kind of knew this was changing me?
Yeah, man, there were two things really. The first rock and roll show I ever got to go see was the Ramones. You know, I dropped off by my mom, you know, the whole little ragtag kid. And, you know, I just walked in there, and I've described it as feeling like outer space, you know. It was just really wild, like the energy and all that stuff, and getting sort of knocked down but picked back up by these bigger punks and stuff. And I just felt like, I don't know, I felt community or something. And then I saw...
You know, and the irony, the Ramones' mom used to drive them in from Queens to their first shows at CBGB.
Oh, that's amazing. I didn't know that.
I had interviewed Charlotte many times, and yeah, I mean, it's a circle, isn't it?
Yeah, and I guess it deserves to be, right? Yeah, and then I saw a high school production of Tommy by The Who, you know, and I think that gave me a sense of like, because, you know, Townsend to me is, you know, sort of otherworldly, right? But then I saw kids, you know, sort of my age playing these Who songs, and I couldn't believe that you could do that. I thought you needed to be tapped by the rock gods or something to do that, you know? And then when I saw that, it sort of cracked my head open, and I was like, maybe I can fake my way through this, you know? Maybe I can do it. So yeah, those were the two moments that really sort of ring true for me, you know?
Were there places for you to play as a kid? You know, when you pick up that guitar, you grew up outside of Philly, right?
Yeah, right.
Were there far outside of Philly? Like you couldn't get into Philly really easily, or could you?
No, not as a kid.
So
sure.
Were there places to play where you grew up?
Yeah, I think we did the thing like most kids do when they don't have sort of that sort of big city sort of thing, is you build it for yourself. So it'd be like basements or fire halls or, you know, whatever that might be, like house parties and Elks lodges, you know, whatever the thing is, you know, we had to build it for ourselves. And I don't know, I think that planted a certain hunger in like the sort of crew I came up with that like, I think that's why we still all sort of are banging around at this thing, you know, because it sort of embedded itself into us so early and so true, you know. But yeah, we sort of had to create a scene. But I think that's why it lasted with us, you know. Yeah.
James, you've sort of been viewed as a late bloomer. You were in a band for a long time, Weston, out of Philly, but you weren't like the main force in that band. I mean, it seemed like you were part of a band. And
he weaseled his way into the top there.
What was that like?
By the end,
yeah,
you were singing and writing. And
yeah, I think it was that. Like, we sort of started out, and that was just like four friends who just like, and we were just so young, and there was no sort of blueprint for us at that time, you know? So we were sort of figuring it out. everybody, three of us were writing, three of us were singing. It was just sort of that that was the spirit of the whole thing. It was sort of.
I read this story about Weston. Tell me if it's true.
Okay, sure.
That you were a fan and you would just show up at every gig.
That's true.
However you could get, and sooner or later, they lost their rhythm guitarist, and they said, "Man, you're here anyway."
You're here anyway. Why don't we just make this thing official? So yeah, that's precisely how it happened. And then we just started doing the thing, and then I learned so much from those guys. Like Dave and Chuck specifically. I learned how to. And it took a good while, but because I came up such a painfully shy wallflower, that they sort of showed me how to front a band. Even though I wasn't fronting that band, they showed me how to do it just watching them. They showed me how to write songs. They taught me about harmony and not just playing chords, but what are all those little dingers you kind of hang over those chords. I mean, I really learned a lot from those two guys.
Well, you went from wallflower to a guy who's playing on stage in his underwear.
Yeah. I mean, it was.
Today we have pants on. This
Right
is
on.
radio.
Yeah.
We had not only pants, but a stylish blazer and a ruffled shirt.
Yeah, well, Sound Opinions. I had to doll up a little bit. Yeah.
No, that's your uniform.
Well,
we know this.
That it is. Yeah, it's my little Clark Kent to Superman thing. But yeah, no, you're right. I think it was that. It was get outgoing. That trial was by fire. I went from kind of being a little ninja, just kind of hiding in the shadows, to like, no, man, we're going to play in our underwear and wrestling singlets, So it's kind of like tap into whatever gear you haven't found before. So yeah. They pushed me into uncomfortable places, but those are those really necessary places we need to go as human beings. I wanted to, I didn't want to stay stuck without a voice my whole life, and they really helped me find it, Yeah.
Well, as I said, you're here with your acoustic guitar. Beach Slang, Greg and I don't agree on a lot. One of the best live bands in rock today. I'm really interested to see what this becomes with just you and your acoustic. I mean, because you'll play a song sort of alone, but you're still amplified on stage, and the boys are there.
Right, sure.
So, but this is how they start, because you record at home, right?
I do, yeah. It's that whole, that test. If it, you've heard this adage before. If it can hold up, it's just you and your acoustic guitar. There's something to the song, I need to make sure it passes that little test first, and then just sort of build it up with those little dingers, those aforementioned dingers and all that kind of stuff, and then we make it loud and it becomes Beach Slang. But but it needs to sort of pass this. I was on radio once and somebody called it the campfire test. Mm-hmm. So I've been subscribing to that title. But this is where they start.
Excellent. Well, what are you going to play?
I was going to play Atom Bomb off the new record. We'll take the rockingest song off the new record and see how that transcribes. But so I have at it now.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
Atom Bomb from James Alex of Beach Slang, solo acoustic. What a treat. Newer album is called A Loud Bash of Teenage Feelings. I love that title.
Thanks, man.
And when you were in Weston, James, there's such an explosion of feeling in these two Beach Slang records.
Yeah.
It's almost like, it almost feels to me like that was just being stored up when you were in Weston. And there was finally this outlet for it. Did you have any ambitions like, I got to do my own thing when you were in that band, or was it just you were just very content to be where you were at that point?
I think, we were all pretty content. We were just best friends. I mean, they're family to me, so it was like, we were all really content, just sort of, being silly and getting into good trouble and just having fun as like friends and brothers and stuff. But I think once that ended, there was this idea of, I think I grew into having the courage to be honest. I think I always sort of hid a part of that away because I just have this just wild fear of rejection that I was just like, well, if I open myself up entirely and somebody's just like, that's no good, then I'm just like, where do I go with that, right? So if I kept a little bit of myself hidden, I could sort of take comfort in like, well, they don't know all of me, right? I think with Beach Slang, and I think maybe it was just bravado came with age, and it was just like I'm just going to kind of tear myself open and see if honesty has a place in rock and roll. And fortunately, it has, at least in our little world, our little scene. Yeah, I'm really glad I did it. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
we took that out of context, you would almost sound like an emo musician.
Yeah, well, I don't know that
Except,
that's that.
the first time I saw you at South by
Okay.
Southwest, it blew my mind because I saw something I hadn't seen in 10 or 15 years, which was stage diving.
Oh yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
okay.
yeah!
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Our friends just got married in Asbury Park. We played their wedding just days ago, and I got tackled on stage. It was like that whole that energy of how I came up it's still around. It felt good to be inside of that. But yeah, no, yeah, it still happens, which is I don't know. There's something necessary about allowing yourself to be reckless from time to time. Yeah.
And at the same time, I mean, the story, and you can correct us on this, is that here you are, early mid-30s. Weston sort of dissolves, ends up breaking up, and what I'd read is that you had at that point sort of thought, well, that's it for me in music. I'm going to be this graphic artist guy, and I'm going to live the straight life from now on.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
How long did that last, and why did it end?
Yeah, right on. Well, yeah, man. It didn't last very long, but I had defined myself by Weston. We all did. We were like, this is what we do. And when that ended, we had that moment of like, well, what / why / who are we now, right? And I was like, well, what do I do if I can't play guitar? And I was like, well, I was making posters and flyers for shows. Art school seemed like, it made sense. So I did that, and then it was just. But you know how people have holes in themselves, and people, I don't know, commonly refer to it as like the God hole or whatever. Mine's shaped like rock and roll. I couldn't not do it. So I think what I did was I spent my time pretty privately working on the thing I sort of adore the most about doing this, and that's writing songs. Just like I dig the idea that nothing exists, and then you just say like abracadabra, and then something exists out of that. So I think I was chasing this sound that took a good long time, and then when I wrote Filthy Luck, which is the first thing I wrote for Beach Slang, I was like, I think I found it. I had that hair sort of stood up on my arms moment of like, this is that thing that has been eluding me, and then we made EP1, Yeah.
But it still wasn't going to be a band
It still
when
was
you made that EP.
Totally. It was just like sort of a recording project. I mean, when the whole thing happened, I sort of let some friends hear these things, and they were like, these really deserve to be record, right? So it was like, okay, well, let's go in and cut it. And then before we even put it out, I moved to California for like design stuff, and we thought like kind of that's what it was. And then because I have this like shameless lack of self-esteem where I was just kind of like, I suppose I have trouble accepting that people might care about anything I do. And that's not a plug to sort of get attention or anything. I'm just really wired to be that way, I suppose. And then when it sort of happened, I was like, well, look, one day I'm going to be regaling tales about my life from a rocking chair. And I'm like, I don't want to tell the story of like, I wonder what would have happened if we chased that Beach Slang thing. So as soon as it felt like there might be a little moxie to this thing we were building, I was like, well, let's go all the way, So then that way, fly or fall, we know we swung with all we had,
Second
Yeah.
EP. And one of the things I found inspiring about your story is your wife encouraged you.
Oh,
It wasn't like grow up, be an adult.
yeah, it was pretty wild. When we got the safety net removal for Beach Slang was we got offered that tour with Cursive, and I had just, oh man, this sounds shameful to say, but I had a kid, I had my son 2 weeks before, and she's like, no, you gotta do it.
Wow.
You gotta go do it. So yeah, man, it would be difficult. It'd be impossible to do if she wasn't so cool. She really promotes the idea, as I think we do to each other, of like, we just want to make each other the best version of ourselves that we can be, because like, that's sort of who we fell for. That's who we swoon over, so we don't want that to be lost. And she's like, if rock and roll leaves your life, you're like a ghost of James, you're not him. So she's been cool, and she has walked it like she's talked it, So yeah, I'm pretty lucky fella. Yeah.
You're listening to Sound Opinions. I'm Greg Codd with Jim DeRogatis. We're here at the Goose Island Tap Room with Beach Slang's James Alex solo mode today. I love the name. We love the name Beach Slang. I think everybody in this room who is watching this is probably has heard this story a million times, but I
right.
think it's a cool little story.
Oh, right on.
How did you come up with that name?
Yeah, well, I'm from New England originally, and I used to skateboard with this girl, Elizabeth, and she would, she'd make fun of the way I spoke, because I, just say rad and totally and stoked and all that kind of stuff a lot. I suppose I watched that Valley Girl movie with Nicolas Cage way too many times, but
And you were a skater kid.
oh, I was a skater kid
Yeah.
for sure. That's how I got turned on to punk, was just being a skateboarder. So yeah, she would like sweetly make fun of me, and she called it a language and named it Beach Slang, and I, had such a sort of bumpy childhood that I wanted to sort of hold on to the soft parts of it, and she's one that sort of sticks out. Yeah, so Beach Slang is
How about another song,
Oh,
Alex?
surely
James?
that'd be great. Yeah, I was gonna play Bad Art and Weirdo Ideas off the last record. Yeah.
Cool. Bad Art and Weirdo Ideas by James Alex of Beach Slang, live on Sound Opinions in Chicago here at the Goose Island Tap Room, surrounded by 100 diehard fans and the smell of beer. It permeates this whole place, right?
It does,
That's
it's-
okay. It's being made right behind that glass. All right, so you pride yourself on your unfailing honesty. I got to go to Salt Lake City with you.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. So you announced several times in the midst of a show. That's it. This is it. This is the last Beach Slang show. You were just telling us how well the band was going, how it clicked. The thing that was interesting to me, people do this all the time. People
Yeah.
have a bad night.
Sure,
they
of
melt
course.
down on stage. Billy Corgan, that was every third show, right? For years. He used to be in a band called Smashing Pumpkin. Never mind. Nobody cares. He's playing state fairs now. The thing that surprised me about the 24-hour Beach Slang breakup was you almost broke the internets. It was not quite Brangelina,
Right.
but a step below. And people
Right.
were like so upset that this band, who had formed such a connection, two EPs, one album.
Right. Yeah, the first conversation I had with my manager the day after that, he said to me almost straight away, he's like, "You have no idea how big your band's getting, do you?" And I genuinely was like, "No, I didn't." Like, because I was from a time like that sort of pre-internet stuff where you could have a bad night like that, and it just sort of became like whisper down the alley folklore, kind of like, "No, I was there that night." It was like, and now things sort of move in real time, and that became a little more. Oh, I feel you, man.
He's still upset about it.
Yeah, he's still broken up about the Salt Lake City night. Well,
people are
solidarity. Thank you.
thought of it.
But yeah. So I suppose I'm very naive. To me, it's like I play songs with my friends and hope some friends show up. That's still how I think of Beach Slang. I suppose I always will. I want to think of it that way. But yeah, that night was, to talk about it in sort of broad strokes to stay, we sort of knew that sort of chemistry was sort of didn't quite have the same thing it had, right? So we knew for a long time, and it's very public now. We've had a lineup change, and we sort of talked about it, and we tried to work it out because like sort of relationships you build, you sort of want that thing to last forever, even if you notice, even if you see the cracks, you don't want to just let it go.
Well, and the first drummer, JP,
Right.
Was instrumental in getting you to record those songs in the first place.
He was, because he drummed a festival with Weston. He filled in because our Weston's drummer couldn't be there, and he was the first cat I let hear these demos that became EP1. So, yeah, I have history with the kid. So it was difficult. I think when it spilled over, it was sort of this thing we could contain to ourselves and to our van trips and sort of how do we work this out, and we're sort of punching into that wall. I think when it became so much that it sort of spilled over publicly, it was, I sort of made that decision where it's like, okay, we can't keep putting a Band-Aid on a broken leg. We got to fix the break. And, so we talked about it because look, and, this is a band and that's what it is. But, we're much, much, much bigger than that. We're a pack of human beings, and I want to make sure we're looking out for each other. And I think it was what we did was sort of the best move for everyone. And we talked about it. It was pretty amicable. I mean, not that he wanted to not be in Beach Slang anymore, but I think we sort of all realized it was, you don't want to exist in sort of a emotional steel cage match for the rest of your life. You want to just sort of have a nice life.
You don't want to wind up as Metallica hiring a band therapist.
Never.
Yeah.
We don't have that sort of wiggle room in the budget, but
$40,000 a week therapist.
Precisely.
Worst
you know,
movie ever made.
Yeah. No, it's the best movie ever made.
Or
It's
the
so
best.
bad.
Well, yeah,
It's
one and the
both
same
at
for
once,
sure.
which is the thing.
It is, yeah. That's a tough balance to strike, but they did it. They did it. Yeah. So it was that, you know, and like, you know, we still talk and we still do that thing, but it was, you know, we had to fix that. Our Beach Slang ended, and I couldn't see this thing that I hold so dear to me ending. You know, I even though I lost sight of that for a moment, you know, the story, you know, it's been told, and someone ran down the street, sort of grabbed me and, you know, gave me a big hug and said, you know, don't leave us, you know, and I was just like, you know, how they do it in like Hollywood movies where somebody's dying and they float out of their body, but then they just go whoom, right back into it. Yeah. That's what happened to me. You know, I had that moment as a singer or a songwriter or just a human being who feels responsible to people that I've met and connected with. So we had to fix it, and we did that. Yeah.
I think there's a Cameron Crowe movie. Every Cameron Crowe movie has that scene, 2 or 3. Don't leave us. We need your music.
Sure. Yeah. So I got to live out my little Cameron Crowe fantasy
Cameron
for a
Crowe
second,
moment.
But it was really, really sweet of her. We're going back the next full U.S. tour. We're going to make sure we play Salt Lake City again, and I just want to, you know, make it really, really right.
I'm glad you played that song, Bad Art and Weirdo Ideas. I remember when I heard that song, that was a song that it was so moving to hear that, and that was made me a fan. I want to hear more from this guy.
All right.
So what I'd like to hear from you, James, is the songwriting process. And it seems when you're listening to the songs, and certainly when you perform them, it's almost like you're living it. It's almost like a stream of consciousness. There's like this bolt from heaven. This guy wrote this song in 2 minutes. What's the reality of it?
Yeah, I get pretty lucky sometimes, you know, and I feel like they're little encouraging gifts to say, yeah, you should keep doing this, because that balances out the ones that take longer, you know, and where the banging the sort of head off the desk. But I don't know, I suppose I'm pretty lucky, or I'm just really hardworking. I mean, I write every day. You know, I remember this, I saw this interview with Brian Wilson, and he was like, you know, I'm not a genius. I'm just a hardworking guy. You know, I love working on doing this stuff. It's the thing that keeps me. I get a buildup of noise in my head, and then if I don't get it out, it's like bumblebees, right? So they come out in the form of songs. So I'm lucky in that way. Yeah. So it's that, you know. I just every day sort of bang around, waiting for that moment where I'm just like, there's something worth chasing in this, you know. Yeah, sometimes I'm lucky, sometimes not so much.
I've heard different theories about that. Some people carry around a little, you know, dictaphone type recorder, or they're in front of a microphone so that they can remember it, or they'll say it into the microphone. Sure. Others are like, if it's any good, I'll remember it the next day. You know, it's like it just sticks with me, and it just haunts me, and that's when I know I've written something that's worth keeping.
That's
How
really
does it work
cool.
for you?
I use a recorder. Yeah, I don't remember where I parked my car, you know. So I have these, you know, we have this technology sort of at our fingertips, so I do that, and you know, because a lot of times too, I wake up with it, so I do that sort of half slur, you know, half REM state sort of thing, and then I wake up and I'm like, oh, that's not bad. Let's see what we can make something out of this. So no, I don't rely on my memory. Mm-hmm. I record them. Yeah, for sure.
I can imagine a lot of people lose stuff that way when they're just trying to remember it. You know?
Well, that's the thing, right? Yeah. I just don't want to be like, because you're always going to perfect it, right? It'll be like, oh, I wrote, and you know, in your memory, it's going to be like you wrote, you know, whatever it might be. Where is my mind or something, right? And then it's like, then you go back to, you know, you listen to it on your recorder, and it's like, no. You know, it's just like, so I'd rather at least have I can verify that it's like, no, instead of like being haunted by like, oh, I think I wrote, where is my mind, you know? Yeah, so yeah.
The one that got away.
The one that got away, yeah.
Well, you were going to play Dirty Lights next, right?
I was going to play Dirty Cigarettes, but I could play
Dirty Cigarettes.
Oh,
Great.
sure.
No, I love that.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All right, tell us how Dirty Cigarettes came together. Because I've also read that you only sleep like 3 or 4 hours a night.
That's true.
And
on a good night, yeah.
A lot of the night you're up and just with that guitar working.
Yeah, I am.
Was this one of those?
It was. This was like, I very rarely sit down, like Bad Art and Weirdo Ideas, I sat down with a purpose of writing for a friend. With Dirty Cigarettes, I sat down with the intention of writing about, you know, the way my birth father always made me feel, right? So that was I don't really do that often, because I find that's very hard to do, is to say, I want to write about this. Typically, I'm more just like, you know, Black Francis said this thing about like, he'll just kind of bash at his guitar and sort of scream around till he has like an eargasm, you know. And I typically, that's my approach, you know. I wait for it to be a little more primal and from the gut. But this is another example of like, no, I think I need to write about that to sort of, I guess it's like sonic journaling or something, you know. So that's how this came about. But yeah, it was like middle of the night.
Yeah.
I think that's when I do my best stuff, because you know how it is, like your mind starts to disconnect just a little bit from your head, and it allows you to go places that maybe you wouldn't when you're a little more structured in the day.
A half
you know?
disconnected state.
For
Your birth father, you always use that term because you don't consider him a dad. He was absent for a lot of it, and he caused you a lot of pain in your life. Your mom, bravely struggled, raised 2 kids, right?
Yeah.
On her own.
Yeah. My mom's an incredible. It'd be like 2-3 jobs and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, so yeah, my brother and I would just kind of get, you know, it's like passed around and stuff. And not like, I don't have a very unique story, but yeah, we just sort of get passed around, and, you know, it wasn't so great sometimes. So yeah, no, he, the word, you know, dad can't trickle off my tongue about him. So yeah, birth father sounds right. So yeah, this is about that. Yeah.
Dirty Cigarettes from James Alex of Beach Slang on Sound Opinions. We're here at the Goose Island Tap Room. Beautiful stuff, harrowing stuff too. It's like we're getting the beauty and the other side of that, the darkness at the same time.
Yeah.
And to me, you know, you're very unabashed about, you know, teenage feelings, you know, in the title of this album, right? And that seems to be a recurring theme in a lot of your music, revisiting some of this stuff. And it's interesting because I think some people may perceive that, well, you know, it's kind of juvenilia. Haven't we moved on, you know? But at the same time, a lot of those events shape who we are as adults. And I think a lot of it is just we come to a certain point in our lives where we start processing how that has affected us. And many of us don't understand until it's too late. We start making the same mistakes. I was curious about, you know, using this music in this way. Because the whole idea of therapy, you know, and the suffering artist, those are cliches.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're processing it into this great music. You know, how do you sort of see that inspiration translating into art?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that's the thing, right? It's like we can sort of get hunkered down into like the knockouts, or, you know, sort of polish those and sort of focus on the, you know, you got back up part. I think what I do is remember that crumminess, but I'm not necessarily interested in it. I'm sort of saying, I got back up, you know, and now look at, like, you can sort of really sort of do the thing out of that murk, you know. I just don't have any interest in being sad, you know. I mean, I get there, but I just, you know, happiness to me is not to me, is an active pursuit. I just choose to say, I'm going to punch back at the muck, and I'm going to make my life pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And I think that's all I'm trying to do. And this is my device to help me. You know, I've described when I write songs, that feels like a baptism. And when I play songs, that's like an exorcism, you know? And then all of a sudden it's like, it's just a sweet little light that's sort of hanging around, you know? I get to knock it out of me doing this thing that I'm so lucky to do, you know? Yeah, that's it, man. I'm certainly not, you know, my life's definitely, as is no one's, it's all like sort of rainbows and bunnies, but it's also not all of, you know, a Cure song either. It's like, there's a nice balance of, you know, good, you know, light and dark, and somewhere in the middle, you know, we get to be alive. And I'm just trying to hang out there for a little bit, you know.
Think the alternative route, you know, you could have been James Alex goth rocker.
That's it.
You could have been wearing the eyeshadow in here. And
I think the word that appears more than any other, though, on a loud bash of teenage feelings is death, dying, or some variation thereof.
I know. I looked back at that, and I was like, it was sort of the equivalent of how many times Alive happened on the first record.
Yeah,
I was
this is the death record. The first one was Alive.
Yeah. And it was, I had this weirdo epiphany, which seems like very common sense, but I was like, I'm not going to live forever. And I think it was like when my son was born, I looked at him, and one of the first things I said was, so you're my replacement on Earth, you know? And I think it gave me this moment of like, what's the back nine of my life going to look like? You know, it really was that. And I think so. Yeah, I think I definitely swam inside these themes of not of death in like this sad way, but it's like, how much living can I pack in before I huff those last breaths? And, you know, as I'm doing those, just to make sure the conversation I'm not having with myself is, I wish I would have blank. Yeah. I just want to be there. I don't know, you know, making out or something when it's at the end. I don't want to have, I want to have fixable regrets in life. Like, it's like, oh, I've never been to, I've never attempted to climb Everest. Like, well, there's still time to try to do that, right? I want to make sure when I'm laying there and I'm about to split, I'm not having that conversation, you know? It's, yeah. So it's not a sad death record, yeah.
How much of this, how much of what we're hearing is you, and how much is your audience? Because your audience is part of this now, it seems to me.
Without a doubt.
Especially you tour a lot, and people respond so viscerally to your music. How does that affect the way you write songs?
Gigantically, right? It's like, so the first record, I describe those songs as 2-minute novels about me and my friends and the things we've done, right? This record, a lot of the narratives of these songs are from people I've, you know, had the good fortune to meet through touring off the first record. It's like, you know, I preface all these records with that, you know, for us, all of us, you know, I've been talking about it a lot lately, like how ego is the embarrassment of rock and roll, and how do I smash the divide between band and listener? And it's like, man, that stuff's important to me. You know, I like the sort of divine rock star thing to me is so dumb, you know, for the lack of a better descriptor. I never say the word fans because that's all so dumb. It's like I get to make friends, you know. I can't see, I don't know. I can't see it as I just don't want there to be any difference. Like, I get asked a lot, like, how do you continue to write back to everybody and you do the social media and you do all these things? I'm like, because it's important to me. You know, it's like, this is a cyclical thing we're involved in. It's like, I could be here right now playing to like beer taps. You know what I mean? It's like, I walked in and I saw the line out front and I shook. I was like, wow, man, I can't believe, you know, people are going to be here doing this thing with me. But I mean that sincerely. I was sort of built without the lying chip. You know, I say a thing and I mean it, and I'm unapologetically half glass full. And I suppose it's that, man. It is like, to me now, we're sort of, it's not about me. It's not about Beach Slang. It's just about this little gang of romantics that we've built. I mean, I think that people who listen to this band or have connected with it are just like really sweet, you know. I want to keep that around. You know?
I wanted to get the guide to your buttons because you're such an astute student of rock history, and a scribe wittier than I has described your what's become your look, the bow tie and the maroon pants, as, you know, Angus Young of AC/DC meets Rick Nielsen of Cheap Trick, but with a lot of buttons.
That's
with
incredible.
A lot of buttons on there.
Yeah.
So Andrew, make sure you get these buttons. Who's on there? I see.
Yeah.
Big Star.
I have Big Star. I have the Replacements.
Okay. What's the Replacements button?
Oh, it's OG.
Oh, okay.
Where is it?
Oh, yeah.
Right there. That one right there.
Ah.
I have the Psychedelic Furs.
Psychedelic. That seems to stand out from the others.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, I love the Furs.
Yeah, I think it's
but they
just
get no respect anymore.
They really don't. So I'm not really sure why.
I think it was the John Hughes movies. I think, but those
that endeared them to me.
Those
I always
first
say
four albums are amazing.
They're incredible, because I always say when people ask about like my songwriting, I'm always like, I just imagine I'm trying to score a John Hughes film.
Yeah,
that's literally my chase.
Yeah.
You know,
God bless John Hughes. That's
so
right.
Yeah, I have Morrissey, which I just got. I have Rocky Horror Picture Show, Jawbreaker, Asbury Lanes, this venue. We would play a whole bunch, and then one with a curse word, so I won't say that.
Okay. Do they change? Do you change them up?
No, these are pretty stuck because I sweat so much that they sort of rust on. So yeah.
But you have a whole other lapel though.
I do, but my strap knocks those off.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
But yeah, my friend Devin gave me this Teenage Feelings patch, so that's stitched on there.
Wow.
Right next to my heart. You know?
To your heart.
Yeah.
Next to your heart.
Yeah.
He's like the valedictorian of Rock and Roll University.
Right,
wait a minute.
Like that, you know?
Don't tell anybody. He could be emo. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Can somebody write
Except
down
you
that
don't suck,
valedictorian
you know?
of rock and roll, though? Can you write that down? That was beautiful. Thank you. I'll give you full credit, of course, but I'm going to try to squeeze that into the bio. Yeah.
What are we going to hear next, James?
I was going to play Ride the Wild Haze. I thought that might be fun to do.
Ride the Wild Haze by James Alex of Beach Slang. From the things we do to find people who feel like us. We're in a room of people who feel like us here at
Right
the
on.
Goose Island Tap Room. That bond you have with people. It's such a pleasure to have you on Sound Opinions. You're going to give us one more song from the new album,
I would love to.
which you're
from the new
supposed to
album.
be promoting.
I gotta get better at the business part of things. You know.
A loud bash of teenage feelings.
That's it.
Now, you've said you want to make an album a year.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, we will.
So this one dropped in September. We got just another year to.
Yeah, it's another year. You know, it gets around.
How many you have written already for it?
I have 3.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
One a month and we're there.
One a month and we're there. Yeah, it's and 10 always feels right. It feels 30 minutes feels right. It's very.
I hate those 72-minute albums. It's too
yeah.
long.
I'd be bored of us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But who knows? Maybe I've got the
Triple
wall,
album.
up my
Triple-
sleeve.
there you
Yeah. Could you imagine a Beach Slang wall record?
Melancholy and the Infinite James.
That'd be
Yes.
amazing. Yeah.
I've got an orchestra.
We'll get really like indulgent on
Yeah.
one record when it's just
Well, Husker Du made Zen Arcade, though, and that's another band you like.
adore.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah, I just
they
got
pulled
asked-
it off.
Yeah,
But they didn't have an orchestra. They just did it with
But it was big
guitar, bass,
sprawling,
drums.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We're
Well,
planting the
that's
seeds.
possible.
We're
Yeah.
giving you some ideas here.
You need a producer. We're available.
good. I can't wait. But so close it out here.
Sure.
So yeah, can I say thank you? Is that okay?
Please.
Okay. I just wanted to thank you all for coming. I wasn't sure who was going to be here, but soft guitar, good beer, sweethearts. It's a little rock and roll heaven. I thank you. It means a whole lot to me. It feels good to be around y'all. Make a muscle with your brain.